Welcome to Chapter 5. Now in this lesson, we are going to talk about engine. So what do you know about engine? Well, engine is a machine that can convert heat energy which is produced from the combustion of fuel, doesn't matter whether it's petrol or diesel, into mechanical energy. So petrol and diesel engine are actually internal combustion engine, meaning the fuel is burned inside the cylinders of an engine. For this lesson, we are going to focus on petrol engine. In the coming lesson, we are going to focus on diesel engine, and the following lesson, we are going to focus on another type of petrol engine, which is not 4-stroke, but is 2-stroke, which is used in motorcycles. Okay, so for this lesson, we are going to talk about a 4-stroke petrol engine. Now, cars are operated by 4-stroke petrol engines, while heavy vehicles such as buses and lorries are operated based on diesel engine. For a 4-stroke petrol engine to work, it will have 4 phases. We call it stroke 1, stroke 2, stroke 3, stroke 4. Or we can also call the first stroke as intake stroke. According to our syllabus, this is known as induction stroke. Now, followed by the second stroke, which we call compression stroke. The third stroke is known as ignition stroke, or what we call power stroke. And the fourth one is the exhaust stroke. So we have 4 strokes, induction stroke, compression stroke, power stroke, as well as exhaust stroke. Most cars have 4-stroke petrol engine, which contains 4 cylinders that look like this. Before we continue, let's take a look at the main components. In each of the cylinder, there is a piston. This is the piston, and there will be an inlet valve. Inlet valve, which allows petrol to come in. Okay, so this is known as the inlet valve. Besides the inlet valve, we also have an exhaust valve. For petrol engine, there is a spark plug. For petrol engine, there is a spark plug, and the cylinders are connected by the rod to the crankshaft. Where is the crankshaft? This part here that you see is called the crankshaft. So for a typical cylinder, what do we have again? We have 4 parts, right? The first part is the piston. The second part is the inlet valve, as well as the exhaust valve. The third part is the spark plug, and lastly is the crankshaft. Alright, now let's move back to the operation side of the 4-stroke petrol engine. Now, when it works, what happens is this. The inlet valve is open. The inlet valve is open during the induction stroke, while the exhaust valve is closed. The piston will move downwards, and this will create a low pressure region in the cylinder, right? So the mixture of petrol and air can be sucked into the cylinder through the inlet valve, and the inlet valve will close when the piston reaches its lowest position. So during the induction stroke, petrol and air mixture is actually being vacuumed into the cylinder. And now what happens to the petrol and air? They will be compressed. So it leads us to the compression stroke. Now, for the petrol and air to be compressed, both of the inlets are closed. The inlet valve as well as the exhaust valve are closed. Both of the valves are closed, and the piston will move up. When the piston moves upwards, it compresses the mixture of vaporized petrol and air to 1/5 of its original volume. And the high pressure will also increase the temperature of the mixture. And when the piston reaches its highest position, the spark plug will produce spark, and the crankshaft will turn half a cycle. So in the induction stroke, the crankshaft actually turns half around, and in the compression stroke it turns another half round, so it will make it one complete turn, right? We call it one complete revolution. Now back to the spark plug. The spark plug now produces sparks, right? This will lead us to the power stroke. Both the inlet valve and exhaust valve are still closed. The mixture of petrol and air is ignited by the spark plug, and because of this, an explosion occurs. Okay, so it's a kaboom that occurs, and what happens is the expansion of hot air pushes the piston down. So the piston will be pushed down, and this will in turn rotate the crankshaft for another half round. And when the piston reaches its lowest position, the exhaust valve will open. So now it leads us to the last stroke, which is the exhaust stroke. The exhaust valve is open, while the inlet valve is closed, and the piston will move upwards. And now, what's the point of moving it upwards? Well, it's to expel. Expel the exhaust gases through the exhaust valve. And when the piston reaches the highest position, the exhaust valve will close, and it will lead us back to the first stroke. Now, how to make everything sound easier? Yeah, you imagine we need to burn petrol and air. So how do we burn petrol and air? First is we invite petrol and air into the cylinder, right? We invite it into the cylinder, just like how you invite your friends back home. How do you invite your friends back home? You open the front door, right? So we imagine the inlet valve is the front door, and the exhaust valve is the back door. So when you invite somebody back home, you open the front door, but do you need to open the back door? You don't, right? So the exhaust valve is not open, just the inlet valve is open. Then you need to give some space for your friend to come in, right? That's when the piston moves down. And you imagine the piston has a tail, and when the piston moves, the tail will move as well. It will move half around. Okay? Now, after you invite your friend home, you close the door, right? You close both doors. Well, you can imagine that you don't really like your friend. Probably it's your enemy that you actually invited home. So maybe you want to revenge, okay? So how do you revenge? You want to bash your friend up, right? So the piston, let's say the piston is you. You move nearer to your friend and you want to bash it up. And this is what we call compression of the vaporized petrol and air. And you squash your friend to 1/5 of its original volume. So when the piston moves up, the crankshaft, which is tied to it, right, will also turn, and it turns half around. Then after you compress your friend, which is actually vaporized petrol and air, now you want to burn it. Yeah, you want to burn your friend. Okay, so how to burn your friend? We need sparks, right? So the spark plug will ignite the vaporized petrol and air, which is now compressed to 1/5 of its original volume. So it has a high pressure as well as a high temperature. And when it burns, there will be a force, an explosion happens, and this expansion of hot air pushes the piston downwards. Yeah, so the piston will move downwards, and at the same time the crankshaft will make half a round. Now after you sort of burn your friend, your house is very dirty, right? So you want to clear off the debris of your friend. Now the story is a little bit extreme, but it actually helps you to remember the petrol engine better. Okay, so you want to clear off of all the debris of your friend. So how are you going to do that? Well, do you open the front door or the back door? You open the back door, right? So the exhaust valve is open. Do you need to open the front door to throw rubbish away? No, right? So you close the front door, you open the back door, meaning the inlet valve is still closed, the exhaust valve is open, and then the piston will go upwards to push the exhaust out, yeah, the exhaust gases out from the engine. And at the same time, of course, the crankshaft would make another half round. So for 4-stroke petrol engine, the mixture of petrol and air is actually compressed to 1/5 of its original volume, and for the whole cycle to be completed, the crankshaft has made 2 complete revolutions. And now let's move on to 4-stroke diesel engine. After that, followed by the comparison between petrol engine and diesel engine.